In this video, we're going to learn about the stacks in Framer and how you can use them to create responsive designs in a fast and efficient way. Stacks work very similarly to Figma's auto layout and the same concepts of Flexbox box model are going to apply. So if you want to learn more about these dynamics, definitely check out CSS Flexbox. Now let's get started with creating our very first stack. There's a few different ways that you can create it. So we're going to simply create a frame, which is a basic element, which is going to be a static element for the very most part. Now, if I add, for example, a text, for example, over here, and a write-in button, of course, text is in white, so I'm going to change it to this dark color, and we are going to essentially add a stack on top of it by simply changing this to a stack. So we're actually seeing that we have a frame, we have a stack on top of it, and I can easily simply remove the text from the frame, and I'm going to have what we used to consider the Figma auto layout, if you're familiar with the concept. Now, another quick way that you can create a stack is by simply going under layout and clicking on rows, and I can create a stack real quick. Now, by default, there's going to be 2 frames inside of it, but if you remove them, select the text and copy and paste it, you can see that now we have exactly the same outcome in a very fast way. Now, that being said, let's talk about how these work. So we're going to simply keep the second one, and I'm going to show you how easy it is to basically work with stacks, especially if you have experience with auto layout. The very first thing that you have to consider is that stacks are going to have all of the power in the parent element, which is the stack itself. So if I create a few duplicates of this button, you're going to notice how these are going to be affected by the parent element by simply editing the elements right here on the right panel. So you can see that we have stack applied. You can change the direction, which in this case it's going to be horizontal, but we encounter an issue, and that is that the parent element is not flexible as it should be. So this can easily be solved by adjusting the width or the height properties, since by default it's going to be fixed, and this is 673 pixels fixed width. But if I select fit content, now you can see how the content fits perfectly. We can also do the same for the height. So if I change it vertically, you can see that we have exactly the same problem because the height is fixed at 354 pixels. But if I select fit content, you can see how this can easily make it responsive, and it works pretty well. Now at this point, other things that we want to consider is the gaps. So just as Figma auto layout, we can adjust the gaps, and I can also go above this scroll wheel. So I can go and add, for example, 200 of gap, and I can easily adjust that. But now let's go back one step, and I'm going to make these fixed again. I'm going to adjust the width and the height to show you another concept which is going to be crucial, and that is the alignment. Because as you know, auto layout, one of the most important features is the alignment, and you can also, of course, change this in the horizontal layout. And when it comes to the left and right, you can actually change it by the distribution. You can also use the space between and the space around directly from these elements, as well as the evenly. So you have all of the options which you're used to. And at this point, I want to remind you that you can also add the padding around the borders. So you can see how this is going to create a layer of padding around them. And you can also be quite specific in terms of the padding that you want on the top, on the right, on the bottom, or on the left. So for example, if I want to increase the padding just on the left and give it 150 pixels, you can see how just this area right here has been adjusted. Now at this point, let's talk about some useful applications on the website of these stacks. So we're going to use this desktop stack, which we're going to simply go ahead and add a rectangle. And as you can see by default, even the containing elements, the artboards, the what used to be frames or stacks, and for good reasons, meaning that these are going to make our life easier when it comes to working on responsive designs. So as we explore the different settings, I also want to remind you one thing, and that is that you can remove a stack by simply clicking on the less in the layout, and I can make this layout again a stack by clicking on the plus, and this applies also to frames. So if I go here under the frame and click on layout, you can see that now this frame is a stack, and I can simply remove it, remove the stack and bring it back to a frame in just one click. So one more way so that you can add easily these interactions. Now let's talk about the different ways that I can position this element within the stack, because though this is a stack by default, the way that the object is going to behave within that stack is not only going to be dictated by the parent element, but also by the element itself. So as I select the rectangle, you can see that the type is relative. Now what that means is that if I click on preview, you can see that as I scroll, I'm not going to see the rectangle anymore. But if I go one step back and then adjust this type, for example, to absolute, or let's start with fixed. I'm going to go to absolute in just a moment. But if we go with fixed, I can adjust the viewport. And if I go back and scroll down, you can see how this element is fixed to this current viewport. So if I move it over here, click on play, you can see how this is going to be fixed again. So it's going to be quite useful for elements such as chat icons or things that you simply wanted to keep over there, such as maybe bottom menu icons and things of that nature. Now, if I go ahead and change this to sticky, you're going to notice one thing, and that is that if I go ahead and click on play, this element is going to stick to the top. Now, it's quite similar initially to what you noticed with the absolute, but there's a interaction element which you need to consider, and that is that if, for example, I add some top margin, let's say, over here. And by the way, in order to make this sticky work, you need to have the overflow set to visible. Otherwise, it won't work. And if you go back again, after adding the padding on the top, click on play, you can see how now this element is basically sticking to the top as I scroll down. So this is going to be quite useful for animations and elements such as top level menus you simply want to have stick on the top. Now let's go back one step, and if I go back to relative, one thing that you're going to notice is that I can move this element around, because the stack, which is the desktop, is preventing me to, because it's essentially dictating where the element is going to be within the web page. So one thing that I can do if I want to give it more freedom, let's say, and go out of the boundaries that are imposed by the desktop, is I can simply select the absolute positioning. And as you can see, now it's out of jail, in the sense that you can move it wherever you want. And if we click on play, you can see how now this element is going to be absolutely positioned to this area in the canvas. So one thing that you have to keep in mind is that absolute positioned elements are going to be located in specific areas. So these need to be adjusted in responsiveness. So over here, you can see that it's positioned 524 pixels from the top and 74 pixels from the left-hand side. But you're going to need to adjust this in the responsive viewports as well, in most likely. So this is an overview of stacks. We're going to learn more and work on practical applications as we go along. And so let's continue with the very next video.